Some of you know that on Friday a week ago, Mylon went home to be with the Lord. On Friday, September the 8th, after 2 years of battling cancer. And he had a gift, not only of music, and I urge you, by the way, the first 3-minute clip there of his testimony was was just the intro to a 31-minute interview with his full testimony. I urge you to go and pull that up on YouTube and watch that when you get a chance. Just a half an hour long, and get the whole story of everything that he did before finding the Lord and what the Lord has done through him since. Yeah, a long history of that. It's called Jesus, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. So you can pull that up, get the whole story there. It's just amazing. This man had a gift. We had at the time that this video was done in probably the mid '80s. We were youth leaders in a church in Illinois, and we had many. I know a whole family that came to Christ because we brought them to that concert, that Mylon concert. He had a gift that very much like our Frank Majeski. He was able to lay it out flat with no nonsense about the gospel of Christ in a way that it was clear, black and white. A choice had to be made, black and white. We call that a gift of evangelism. But when you're an evangelist, you understand that there is no other choice. To not choose Jesus Christ is to choose death. To not have him is to have death. There isn't some place in the middle. There's no middle ground with Christ. And if you have that, if you know him and you love him, you know that there's no other way. You can't go a middle route. You can't do anything else that drives you but want to tell people that. Frank had that. Mylon had that. As he said, over more than 250,000 came to Christ through their concerts that they did with Broken Heart. Just amazing. In 1970, he came up with his first Christian album called We Believe. And he wasn't really following the Lord yet. It was at least with his whole life, but his knowledge of God and his commitment to Christ had been from his youth as a child growing up in a Pentecostal home. So he had that knowledge and he was bringing that, but the whole band behind him, which those of you who know rock from the 60s, Southern rock particularly, the Atlanta Rhythm Section, the guys that became known as the Atlanta Rhythm Section. It was a group of guys who were professional musicians who would do studio work with other musicians who didn't have a band of their own. Those guys would go on tour, but their band members weren't really good enough to press an album, so they had this group, which was known as the Atlanta Rhythm Section. Well, Mylon did his album with them and toured with them. In fact, there was a time when they were here in Detroit around 1970-71 when that album was made, and it just so happens that Kathy, my wife, and her best friend Shelley Nagel, who's now Shelley Silverberg, Neil's wife, went to that concert. They're brand new Christians. They came to the Lord here at the Fisherman's Net St. Sylvester's Friday night meeting, and they went to that Mylon concert. So they were bold enough and young and stupid enough to go backstage and listen. We want to meet this band. We never saw Christian music like this before. That was no nonsense. So they went back there to where the band was. Mylon wasn't in the room, but all the other guys there, who were the musicians, were there, and they were, to their great disappointment, they're all smoking pot and getting high after the concert was over. And so Kathy and Shelley, who are just saved for a few months at the time, start telling them about Jesus.
Praise the Lord.
So how about that? But Mylon had written fantastic lyrics. One of the lyrics on that 1970 album, I know Alex knows very well because he mentioned that, called Searching for Reality. And this was his ability to put thoughts and feelings and truth into rhyme and into words was amazing. It was a gift. And then, of course, his ability to make melody and to sing put him on a world stage with, as you saw, the world's top musicians. He played on their albums. They played on some of his albums. But Searching for Reality, which was written when he was still a teenager, 19, 20 years old. I could just about repeat the lyrics from memory myself. This album was so foundational in us as young Christians together with. It came out actually before Phil Keaggy's first album, which I believe was 1971 or 72. Second Chapter of Acts, I think 74 was their first album. And Mylon was already doing this in 69, 70. Searching for Reality, I find my immaturity. My insecurity brings on my immaturity, and I guess it shows. Life becomes so complicated. Some people get inebriated, others get high and feel alienated. They say their mind grows. Mentally, it's so complex, I fear that I might be the next to lose my soul. And I guess that reflects my philosophy. And then there's a little lead there, and then he comes back with the chorus, which he repeats twice. And he says, let me see if I can get this from memory. Reading books of love and strife, I chanced upon the book of life. Once again, I chanced upon the book of life, and once again, the truth of life surrounded me. So again, I sit and wonder why. I thought I had to simplify the basic truth that meets the eye. The one who lets out the newborn cry came to earth to live and die for you and for me. He wrote that as a teenager. We're glad that we know where he is, gone to be with his reward. And I'm rejoicing. And I'm going to kind of use that story and tell you another story in a minute. To lay down before you, when we celebrate baptism, we're celebrating life instead of death. We're recognizing that we're born into this life dead spiritually. That means apart from God. You come into this world and you're alive physically, every single one of us. But you don't know God from day one of your birth. You have to be born a second time, born again. You're severed from God because of this thing called the sin nature. And you can't fix it. You can't do anything by your nature except that which is opposed to God and hostile to Him. You can't do good things to cover up the bad things. At some point, you're gonna explode. You're gonna find that doesn't work. I can't stop doing the bad things. I had a Saturday a week ago. I had a man who just started coming to our Bible study on Saturday morning at prison, where I go, at Thumb Correctional in Lapeer. And this guy's just been coming for several months now, and he spoke up. He's a Hispanic man, and he's older, a little bit older than myself, and he has a long history of incarceration, and he's committed some crimes. But he spoke up and he asked this question. He said, you know, he's thinking about all these things and all these thoughts in his life, and he says, I just wondered if there's anybody that can shed some light on this subject for me. He says, you know, we see the world like it is, and it's broken, and there's people that are hurt, and especially those that are young and innocent and get hurt. why doesn't God do something to stop this stuff and all the evil and the bad stuff before it happens to people who are just basically innocent bystanders? And he spoke about that for several minutes. And then he says, if there's anybody who could share some light on that, please do. And I finished that conversation with this. I said, that's a question that theologians as well as philosophers in the world have debate, and they have debated for centuries. I can tell you right now, in this context right now, we don't have time to explore what those arguments are, and that's worthy of discussion. But I can tell you one thing, that in the Bible and biblical Christianity, it's the only place that does have answers that are going to hold water and they're not going to self-destruct. You'll only find answers there because it causes us to look up to Him. You won't find answers anywhere else. That I can tell you, and we can talk about that later. But instead, I'm going to tell you this story. And I told him this story of something that happened to me back when I was a teenager. And this is to show that when it's all said and done, your questions are going to be between you and God, and He's the one that's going to answer those questions for you. And when it's all said and done, you can't point to God as, I can't believe in you because this happened, you did this and allowed this to happen and that happened. When I was 14, growing up in not to give you the whole background, but a lot of you know it anyways. Growing up in a home with a father who raised 4 kids. Our mother was in an institution. We never knew her. My father divorced her, so they had a home that had it was broken. It was dysfunctional. There was a lot of anger. He was a rageaholic. He was angry at what he felt was the bad hand he was dealt in life, and he let him. People know about it. He left the Catholic Church, which was his upbringing. I mean, he was raised in it, went to Catholic school, the whole shot, lived it. It was his parents. His parents came from Rome, where one of his mom's sisters was a nun in the Vatican. It was very ingrained, but without a relationship with Christ. There was no love, there was no hope, there was no joy, no peace. I grew up hating my dad for what I didn't have. And there was violence there. There was anger and there was rage, there was hatred. And I took it on myself. And one day, when I was about 14 years old, he was mad at me for something or other and banished me to my bedroom for 24 hours that whole day. And it was a weekend. There were relatives that came over. They had a meal. They're laughing, and there's noise, and there's partying going on. And I'm sitting in a room alone, seething, feeling like I shouldn't be here. Why am I even here? Like I'm nothing. I'm not important enough to be part of the family. I'm not part of the family. And with all that happened and what happened when there wasn't guests in the home was completely different than the way things looked like when people came over. And I, in my desperation and rage at that young age of just 14, cried out to God, literally, and I said, at this point in time, with the knowledge that I had of God from the religious upbringing that I have, which was a lot of it was true, a few things were not true. And I said to God, in my anger and desperation, I hate you. why did you give me this family? Other kids have two parents. Other kids have this. Other kids are happy. They have things. I have this. I don't want to be alive. And I blamed God for my existence. And I put it on him in my rage and anger and told God I hated him. I want to die. I don't want to live another day in this life. And with that, while the sun is setting and it's dusk and it's starting to get dark out, and I'm just beginning to doze off, but not fully asleep, but neither awake either. God took me at my word, and he was about to give me my request. I was lifted up out of my body, came up out of my body, and I looked down and I said, what's happening to me? And I saw myself lying in the bed, went through the ceiling, through the roof of the house. Again, I looked back down and I saw myself, saw the bed, saw the house. The house is getting smaller and smaller. I saw my whole street. I saw the subdivision, and it got smaller and smaller, and I'm being raised up and over, and I realized that I could not stop what was happening to me. I didn't want it to happen to me. I was fearful. I was full of fear because I couldn't stop what was happening to me, and I couldn't control it. I didn't know where I was going, and I didn't know what was happening to me, and I couldn't control it, neither could I stop it. And so when I turned up to see which direction I was going, there's nothing there but blackness and darkness. And I felt loneliness, and I felt terror enveloping me. I knew I was not going up. I was going into a place of utter blackness, like a black hole, and emptiness and isolation. And when I realized what was happening, where I was headed, and that I couldn't stop it, what happened, with every bit of my gut from the inside out, I screamed and yelled, "No! I don't want to die." And immediately, I'm back inside my body, sitting up. And I realized that if I die now, even as a teen who hated his life, I'm going. I don't have a key or a ticket to guarantee I'm going to heaven or a place of bliss. I'm going to a place that I deserved, because what was in me, I had to admit, was anger and rage and hatred and lust and all that is about me that kept me from a life. I thought all families had happiness, joy, and love and peace. Oh, well, that wasn't true either. We have broken people everywhere who are desperate. And in fact, those who seem to have the most materially are oftentimes the most desperate of all and empty of all. More divorce there than ever. And I recognized even that as a teenager, now let me tell you, I didn't come to Jesus and come to know him for 3 more years. I knew that I knew I wasn't going to heaven. I knew I wasn't worthy of it. But I wasn't ready at that point of surrendering all of me, of coming to God not just to get out of the fires of hell. Salvation is way more than fire insurance. It's like Mylan said a moment ago, I had to surrender my life to him. I had to want to know that there's something more to life than just existence and being around other people who made you feel good or who affirmed your identity. You have a bigger reason for living than that. And what kept me from that and banned me from that wasn't what somebody else did, wasn't what my dad did, or the absence of a mother, or the presence of an angry or dysfunctional father. It wasn't anything anybody did to me. It was what was in me that was wrong and separated me from God. Because God was putting his finger on me and showing me I needed him. I needed a Savior. I needed grace. And he lays out before every person life and death. And he pleads with you to choose life. God does not take pleasure in the death of the wicked, even the wicked, even the Hitlers or the Saddam Husseins or the Osama, I meant to say. Could be the first one too, but but every single one of us is born severed from God and from his presence. And he died for all. He died for me. And that's why there is no hope outside of the cross of Jesus Christ. And that waters of baptism, like Pastor Chris said, doesn't save you. But it's the first step and the first act of obedience to somebody who recognizes that God is doing a work in my life. And it's him that I'm responding to. He's changed me. He's the reason I have the live that nothing in this world can ever satisfy or fill. I know him. I've come to know him. And based on the fact that I know that he is my life, he defines my life, he gives my life, I'm choosing to be set apart from this world and to live for the one who's setting up a kingdom on the earth that will never, ever die. And it will prevail on the earth. There's two kingdoms. When we used to hear Frank speak his testimony every week for like 9 years at St. Sylvester's, he laid it out with his testimony. You've got to turn your back on the world to come to Jesus Christ. The world is hostile to God, and if you're still a friend of the world and you've got to hold on to it, you're not going to enter into his kingdom. You haven't let go of this world, which represents what man can do, what man wants, our own agenda. And is your heart still in league with what this world's agenda is around you? Are you ready to say, I'm going to cut that off now? The same way as the Savior was cut off from life when he hung on the cross. I'm choosing to cut myself off from this world and this life, because if I don't, first of all, I'm going to go down with it. It's a sinking ship. The Titanic is sinking, and all 2,000 and something people on it are going down into the icy waters. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to go down with it and say, oh, we're not that bad? What hope do you have of being rescued from that? And the hope is, and the fact is that God became man and took and came and shared the pain of our rebellion against him, bore it on himself, and then offers you life instead at his own expense. You can't reject that and still not be accountable for that. You see? So maybe the guy that's asking the question, answer me how God is just to allow all the pain and suffering, and then I'll think about believing him. God is calling your bluff. What have you done with about the things that you and the people you have offended and hurt? What have you done to fix that? And if you're honest, you said, I can't fix it. I need to be delivered. And to call out on somebody bigger than me. And that's what the gospel says. The gospel says God did just exactly that. He became one of us and took on flesh in the likeness of flesh so that God could condemn sin in human nature. That's Romans chapter 6. And in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 11 to 20, I'm going to go there right now. And this too is where the Israelites, this is the end of the book of the law, of the end of the entire Pentateuch or Torah, the last several chapters of Deuteronomy, book 5 of the Torah. And they're standing before Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. And God is offering them this choice before you every single day is, who are you going to choose and what are you going to live for and what are you going to live as if this is true or not? These are the blessings, Mount Gerizim. These are the curses, Mount Ebal, for those that choose him and those that reject him. Notice, I set before you life and I set before you death. Choose life. It's God's desire. But he can't and he won't choose for you. You have a will. Are you convinced? I got to ask myself sometime, what do you think? You're not going to die? You think you're going to just go on like in the present tense forever? Hello, 1 out of 1 of us dies. And the longer you live, the closer you are to that. So, what are you waiting for? We're masters at blocking that out and stuffing that in a box and throwing it in our forgetfulness. But God has a way to bring that back up because he takes everything that you're standing on and removes it out of you. That's what God did for me from the time I was 14 until 17 when he showed me where I was going. And then by the time I was still holding on to me with my pride. I can do this, I can do that better than other people. My good grades, my career, I'll do what I'm going to do and I won't need anybody else. And I set myself up without anybody else. But that life set me up in a place of loneliness and despair. There wasn't answers there. You see, God had to take everything that I thought I wanted, school, business, success, a girlfriend, the relationships that I had, and pulled it all out from under me so that I had no place else to go but him. And sometimes that's what God is doing for it. When God takes stuff away from you, it's because he's merciful and he's not sending you to judgment just yet until you've made that final decision. Will you choose me? He made you for himself. He made you in a way that he's the only thing that can satisfy and fulfill you. That's eternity that he's placed in your heart. Deuteronomy 30, beginning of verse 11. Now what I'm commanding you today it's not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. Wait a minute, 627 laws in the Torah? That sounds to me like over surmounting them. I'm going to do them all. Listen to what he says. No, it's not too difficult for you because in the end, it's all about one thing. Are you going to love God or are you going to love the world or love yourself? Are you going to love God and love others as yourself? You do that, you'll fulfill all the rest of it. It's that simple. But in order to love him and do that, you're going to have a new heart. It's not up in heaven so that you have to ask, who's going to send into heaven to get it, proclaim it to us, and bring it back down to us so that then we can understand what God requires of us and then obey it and do it. It's not that far from you. God's saying, I've given you my word. These are my words. Here is life. Here is death. It's laid out in black and white. It's in the scriptures. The scribes are there. They'll read it to you if you're not legible, if you're not literate. It is here for you. You don't have to ask God to send a prophet or an angel down to you. Nor is it beyond the sea, some other country, up in where some guy is sitting in the lotus position up in the mountains of Tibet, trying to contact God so that he can tell us what he's like. It's not somewhere else. So that's, all right, who are we going to send on the other side of the sea to get it and proclaim it to us so that we may obey it? No, the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and it is in your heart so that you may obey it. So, see, look before you, what I'm showing you. I set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commands, decrees, and laws. And then you will live and increase, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you're entering to possess. But if your heart turns away and you're not obedient, and if you're drawn away to bow down to other gods and worship them, I declare to you this day that you will certainly be destroyed. You'll not live long enough in the land that you're crossing the Jordan to enter and possess it. This day I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you, all of creation, all the angels, all the hosts, all of humanity who have passed on, who have lived. Behold, this great cloud of witnesses beholds you today, what choice you're making today on who and what you're serving. See how important that is? You can't escape. Not to make a choice is a choice. To say, I don't want him, I don't need, I'll think about that tomorrow. How do you know you're going to have it tomorrow?
Amen.
Life and death, blessing and curse is before us daily. Now choose life so that you and your children may live and that you may love the Lord your God, listen to his voice, hold fast to him, for the Lord Yahweh is your life. The Lord is your life. He's not just a way to life. He is life. To cut yourself off from him is to cut yourself off from life. It's like a car that says, well, I'm going to rebel against the gas companies. I'm just not going to go pump their gas into my vehicle. I'll show them. Well, your car's going to go a few hundred miles and then it's going to be found on the road dead without the source of fuel that it's required to give life. And you and I are vehicles that require a source to stay alive. And what the devil wants to keep you thinking is that you've got it all in you. You don't need anybody else to listen to. I. And that's what he did, and he was cut off, and he's going to a place of utter darkness. And he's bringing down as many with him as he can into that same lie that you are enough and you are sufficient all by yourself and don't need any other source of life. He's the father of lies. And the one who gave his life for us is the Father of light. And he's the source of love. And there's nothing he'll hold back. He would hold back from those who desire him and call on his name. That's the message. Will you call on his name? God swore to give you life. He created you for life. And it all comes back to Jesus Christ. Watch this in John 3, 35 and 36. The Father loves the Son and placed everything in the Son's hands. Now this is the Son. He's about ready to go back to the Father. Whoever believes the Son has eternal life. Whoever rejects the Son will not see life, for God's wrath remains on him. Actually, this is his conversation with Nicodemus at night. Nicodemus, the Pharisee. And he's making it clear, and remember that he said this man was a teacher of the law, but didn't understand what the spiritual significance was of the law, that it was a revelation of God to us, and a revelation that we can't keep it, the law, on ourselves by our own strength, by our own willpower, but we need the Son. The Son came not to condemn us. Verse 17 of that same chapter, for God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him would be saved. We're saved and we're redeemed from the pending judgment that is all of us that will stand before him if you don't have the Son of God in your life. He's given away, and he's going to give away so that every single person will be able to make that choice and to choose Jesus Christ. That's why he's sent the church, and the vehicle of that is through the church. It's the church that has the message and the mission to carry that mission. We are ambassadors for Christ so that the world will see and know that what is the answer to life. The world around you is perishing without hope, without God in this world. It is perishing, and we carry that message of life. We are his ambassadors that say that God, as though God was in the world, speaking to the world through us, be reconciled to God. By the way, I can't wait till we start next week our study in 2 Corinthians, because that's exactly where that all is. It picks up really where Galatians left off. Galatians was the theology between grace over law, and 2 Corinthians is the practical application of it. That now I, who am not sufficient for any of the things of what God wants to do in the world, am now, in fact, chosen by him to be the very vehicle through which he wants to carry his life and shine his light to the world of darkness around us. Stay connected. Stay in the flow of his life coming into you, so what comes out of you is just him. And don't let anything block that. God has given you that purpose and that mission. Brothers and sisters, I want you to choose his life today. I'm going to close with, before we open, I'm going to close with one more song. It's going to be on a video for just 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll open up the altars for prayer. And we'll do that. And a chance for you to make sure that where you're going and what you're living for is life, is Jesus Christ. This is another song from Mylon called "The Warrior," and it is it ends with this plea of the Lord, from the Lord himself: "Come home, come on home." Just like the brother who was baptized said, "I feel like I'm home," right? When you're in God's house, in his household, you know there's something different there that you're not getting in any other group, whether it's a work-related group or a sports team. This is home because there's a body here of folks like me who are needy and who have experienced the life-giving touch that the Son of God came. He's real. Call on his name. He's the only one that gives life. Will you come home? And when that invitation is given, you see what that is? It means to call on his name. Call on Jesus Christ. He will never let you go. He never let me go. From the day I finally surrendered to him in 1972, he has made himself known to me and reminded me daily that he is there. I have never had a day where I felt empty, dark, in blackness, and totally isolated from him. Never. I've always had the assurance that he is there, and to stay in contact with him daily. That's my delight. It's also a duty that I get to do, to stay in the flow and of being his steward in this life and in this world. So let's just be blessed by this, and then we'll close for prayer.